Welcome to Here and Now. I'm Frederica Freiberg. Tonight, we bring you the first of a two-part in-depth visit with the candidates running for U.S. Senate. Next Friday, Green Party candidate Ray Vogler and independent candidate Ben Glatzel will be here. Tonight, we talk with Republican candidate Robert Gerald Lorge and Democrat incumbent Herb Kohl. Mr. Lorge is an attorney based in Bear Creek. That's about 30 miles west of Green Bay. Mr. Lorge also ran as the Republican candidate in the 2004 U.S. Senate primary. Incumbent Democrat Herb Kohl seeks his fourth term as U.S. Senator. He was first elected in 1988. His Senate committee membership includes seats on the Judiciary and Appropriations Committees. And welcome to both the candidates. Thanks very much to both of you for being here.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Thank you for having us.
I will start with you, Senator Kohl, and ask, we know that you voted to authorize going to war with Iraq. If you knew then what you know now, would that vote change?
Well, if the information that we were given then, which as you know is that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, was developing an atomic weapon, which was the basis for the vote, and that all turned out to be false. So if that information were available, in fact, that they did not have these weapons of mass destruction, there would not even have been a vote. So that information that was conveyed to us with such conviction by various members of the administration, from the president on down, turned out to be not true. And although the president makes the point that regardless of that, he believes we made the right decision.
Do you?
Well, we would not have had a vote, even on whether or not to give the president the authority without the question of weapons of mass destruction.
So you don't regret that vote now?
Well, I say based on the information we had, I believe it was the right vote. But had we had the correct information, which I believe the administration was responsible for giving us, and the American people, after all, when it comes to going to war, the information that you bring as a basis for going to war should absolutely be accurate information. So I believe we're given information that turned out to be untrue, and for that the administration, I believe, is culpable.
Mr. Lorge, what about you? Knowing what you know now, because you have that benefit, would you vote to go to war in Iraq?
I actually think that we had to go to Iraq for more than just the one reason the senator gives of weapons of mass destruction. American people know that Saddam Hussein was the Hitler of our day, sitting on 1/4 of the world's proven oil reserves, able to fund terrorist groups. If he didn't have weapons of mass destruction, he sure showed the proclivity that he wanted to acquire them. We couldn't take that risk.
How would you describe how things are going there?
I would say the things, you know, turned out well originally. They've turned bad since. One of the major disputes I have with the senator is he keeps voting for the budgetary appropriations for the Iraq war. You know, they are sitting on 1/4 of the world's oil. We're spending $100,000, you know, a minute there. That's $144 million roughly a day. To give that some perspective, that's about 2.1 billion or million barrels of oil a day, which is what Iraq produces. They ought to pay their own way.
We're spending a lot of money there. What about any timetable, Senator, for withdrawal?
Yes, certainly. Well, I mean, clearly by any estimate, it has become a quagmire and something that is unimaginable in terms of our continuing on for some indefinite period of time. People in the administration are talking about being there for 5, 10, and even 15 years as an occupying force. That's not possible. What we need to do is to set a date upon which we will begin a redeployment of our forces. I don't believe in setting a target date for the entire withdrawal because that would create a disaster, and we have a responsibility. But it seems to me that we cannot tell the American people and the rest of the world, as well as the people in Iraq, that we're going to be there for an indefinite period of time, spending $2 billion a day, as Mr. Lorge points out, losing, as we lost last week, for example, 21 fine young Americans, and other than young, who've done a tremendous job and very professional, totally loyal. No question about the quality of the job they're doing. But we deserve to bring an honest assessment to these people and to the American people. And we deserve to have some kind of a light at the end of the tunnel, and that's why I believe we should set a target date to begin a withdrawal.
What is your opinion of setting a date for withdrawal?
Any date setting for withdrawal just emboldens the terrorists. That's a cut-and-run strategy. I agree with what U.S. Senator John Warner said today. The management of the war is something that leaves a lot to be desired. We need to explore new options on how to win this war. If America does not win this war and stop the terrorists there in Iraq today, America will be kicked around the block for the next several decades. That's something we can't afford. That'll make America less safe. We need to win that war. We just need to find out how to manage it more properly.
I'd like to point out that it is much more, as you know, than a war against terrorists. There's a civil war going on there. They are killing each other, and that's the largest part of the military activity that's going on, is the killing of each other by Iraqis. And that's the kind of an engagement that we don't want to become a permanent part of. And that's why I think it's very important for the government there to know, as well as the Iraqis, that we're not going to be there forever, that there is some kind of a target date that we have in our mind to begin to redeploy our forces. If we don't do that, what argument can one make that it's not going to go on for 15 or 20 years?
You have a valid point, Senator.
I'd like to just move this a little bit closer to home, and we could talk about this for the next 5 hours,
sure.
But closer to home. There was
Sure.
the father of a soldier from Wisconsin who was killed there, who asked the U.S. military to investigate whether or not our soldiers, those soldiers from Wisconsin, are being adequately trained and supplied. Mm-hmm. What are you doing to make sure that our soldiers
Absolutely.
are...
There was a question about that. You know, it was demonstrated that our soldiers in many cases were going into conflict without adequate armor, and that was certainly totally unacceptable. And we've had several votes to provide the funding to see to it that our soldiers are properly armed and protected when they go into conflict. And I believe that we've done that fairly well. Yes.
That's partly where...
I don't believe that that is a major problem of any sort, that our soldiers are no longer personally protected when they go into conflict. But as you know, they're still being killed because they're being blown up by these improvised explosive devices.
Well, the Senator brings up a good point. I mean, for example, they voted for a budget to have a $20 million victory ceremony. That could have paid for about 88,000 helmets, you know, flak jackets.
Premature, to be sure.
Well, let me make this point. All those votes that we took were votes that were sponsored by the administration and the Republicans. And, you know, in many cases, we voted for things that we thought were, you know, dubious, but we never wanted to vote to not support, as I think you were referring to, not support our troops. If we voted to not support our troops, that would be tantamount to saying we need to leave. You cannot vote not to support your troops, which you were alluding to.
I believe that we have to support the troops at every stage of this endeavor.
Absolutely.
It's just that the way in which the budget has gone, the oversight of Congress, they're doing something wrong. The world knows they're mismanaging the war. So the whole thing is to, you know, use John Warner's approach and find some people that we can send there that'll get the job done right. I believe in getting in, getting the job done, and then getting out.
Let me move along to terrorism, and it obviously segues with the war in Iraq, and I'll direct this to you, Mr. Lorge. Senator Russ Feingold, our other senator, strongly supports the idea that this war in Iraq has actually spurred global terrorism in a very big way, not kind of prevented it. What is your opinion of that persuasion?
Well, I look at the long historical view. This war against terror, particularly in the Islamic fundamentalist world, began a long time ago. When you have a secular country like Turkey, where the prime minister says that our minarets are our bayonets, and you have these hate schools, the madrasas, turning out future, you know, terrorists and people that want to blow themselves up.
Do you think the war in Iraq is making that better or worse?
I don't think that the war in Iraq is making that either any worse or any better. I'd rather fight the terrorists in Iraq than to fight them, you know, on the streets of New York, the streets of Chicago. So if you have to fight them over there, but get the job done. Realize who the enemy is. It's not all the Muslims of the world. It's a few extremists that want to grab power in all of these countries. We should have never, Senator, allowed Iraq to become an Islamic republic, just for one example. We should democratize these places, allow their people true freedom.
Senator Kohl, do you want to weigh in on
Certainly. Well, terrorism, as we know, is going to be